actually have an opportunity to really shape what they actually create. And then next, brand and personal brand is all about that. So as we think about this, next slide, I love to think of George Eliot's quote because I think it's really, really important. It is never too late to be what you might have been. And a lot of people say, oh, it's too late for me. I mean, I have my 20-something students saying it's too late for me. And I'm like, what should I say, right? So I mean,
it's really talk about knowing your ability in terms of branding. You know, what are you able to do and how do you market that or how do you brand that? But I wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit more about how your values go into branding and why they're so important. And then also just academic branding. It's such an odd kind of space to be in academic, especially at this cultural moment. And so what you think are the unique values that academics can bring to the discourse, and how can we brand ourselves effectively?
Wow. So there's a lot in that question. No question, so powerful. I think essentially as humans, it's not just what we're capable of doing, but who we are is so much about our values. Values are an essential part of actually retention of understanding and being affiliated with a brand. I don't care whether it's a company, a leader, or you. So the importance of defining what you stand for becomes really important in terms of your being more real to people. And that is not just through the values, but through the stories you tell that connect with that. So that's why I foundationally ask people when I work with them, or and I do a lot of this of late, is what are the competencies and the qualities that distinguish you, and what are the things that support that, and what do you stand for, and what are you doing to support that? That kind of information is actually retained more than your competencies. What you stand for actually stays longer. And there's a lot of research that supports that. So it's a distinguisher that you have an opportunity to differentiate yourself, because not everybody does that. And that's why when I work with leaders and I say, if you want to distinguish your leadership, don't just talk about how capable you are as a leader, but actually what you stand for as a leader. In this recent research that I just did on personal brand and thought leadership is seen as an incredibly important element of a leader. I do a lot of work with leaders, teach leadership, teach C-suite perspective, a whole bunch of stuff around this. And over 60% of my respondents said that they want their leader of their organization to be a thought leader. Thought leadership connects directly.
I'm the founder and director of the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies. I did a PhD on Canadian fame in Australia, and then I established the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies after having a chat with my PhD examiner, David Marshall Research Center. We have over 3,000 members across the world, and so we hold conferences on top of seminars and workshops, and we just had an outstanding workshop from Jacqueline Strayer. Now I'm actually creating a lot of visual evidence to do exactly what Jacqueline said. I just got quoted in the Telegraph. Previously I was in Vice shackling CBC, the Golden Mail, the African Entertainment, but now I would like to more portray behind the scenes and also continue media relations.
My name's Alex Sutton. I did my PhD back in the UK at the University of Nottingham. That was in film and television studies. Since then, I have taught a range of colleges in Connecticut. Mostly I've been teaching communication, film, media as well. I have recently designed the course Digital Culture, which is a place I teach at now, which is right here in New York, about 8 minutes walk from here, at a little place called LIM College, which is a small but very innovative institution from developing their media and communications program, and that encourages students to think about the digital presence, how they use social media, and how it relates to other media generally, and to get them to think about it critically in the way that we already established thinking critically about film, about television, think about it in an academic way. I have published a range of, authored a range of publications in media communications. I published a book on Mel Brooks, which is looking at his work from an industrial context, which was published by Edinburgh University and Columbia University, I believe, over here. I have recently authored an article, a chapter rather, in a book about our lovely President Trump, which talks about American satire and how satire is trying to deal with President Trump and how it's adapting for this age and how it engages with American comedians, which are really stepping in as journalists, which I think is a really interesting phenomenon. My recent research and publications, other things, and a book I'm working on now is essentially about digital culture and how it's changing American comedy. So it's kind of a continuation of that kind of thing. It's how people use new media forms to develop profiles which are flagging careers which have ended, get automated through things like podcasting. How they use social media as well is a large part of that. And it is, I think, a really difficult area to talk about.
At this point, and I was struggling through the handout we've been given to see if it has my bio on it. It doesn't, which would have made it easier for me. So I'm just going to rattle this off the top of my head. It's not organized like hers at all, and most of it is on the bio. But I recently joined the Institute for the Study of Human Rights at Columbia, and will be working very closely with Gayatri Spivak on the Myanmar genocide. And the public outreach that is behind this project is really my liaison with the United Nations, because I've been driving for convention changes, new conventions rather, on sexual violence. So that is starting to attract. I mean, the project is not yet there, but I did make some high-level presentations at the UN, which you know, had a lot of media attention. But the other project that I'm, the other position that I have is with as a global scholar at Rutgers, New Brunswick, and I am, and that's my book project on bringing indigeneity and immigration together. And so you can see these are very, very topical issues, and it does attract media attention. But one of the reasons I've been kind of hiding behind, hiding from the media is because of the story that I presented for my keynote this morning, that my work on human rights and feminist scholarship and activism is being targeted. So I was very, very badly targeted. And actually I fled Nebraska. And at that point I was on a visa.
University in San Diego, La Jolla, California. And I had specialization in popular culture, consumer culture, and trends, media, imagery, fashion, beauty. I've led 12 conferences at Oxford University on fashion and beauty things that were international conferences. And also on celebrity deaths. That's a lot of interest in my work has been on celebrity deaths besides popular culture, fashion, and beauty, and public reaction to them, and representations of death in the mass media and palliative medicine. I have a lot of experience with mass media, and it's come haphazardly. I've never had like a platform. It was attracted by my scholarship, actually. And let me just go over some of the stuff I've done. I've done documentaries. I've appeared in documentaries and film festivals, done major TV like The Today Show, CBS 48 Hours, BBC, CNN, Sky News, so on, contributed to Oprah. I
feel like I'm kind of like bragging. I can give you a whole long list here, but I've done a lot of work. Done maybe 100 or more magazine and newspaper articles, interviews, New York Times. I'm not a journalist. I've been interviewed as a scholar expert. So New York Times, The Guardian, Sydney Herald Tribune, Vice, Allure, More Magazine, French Vogue. And some of my work has gone viral, and it's been picked up by other journalists or grad student or undergrad blogs, even by people like Richard Dawkins. One of the things that got a lot of play was 48 Hours.
I'm currently an assistant professor of digital media at Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. And yeah, my I came to sort of celebrity studies, particularly originally interested in celebrity as an industry, as sort of a media construction, but a media construction that is embodied in an individual. I found a sort of really fascinating sort of take. But then sort of as I'm in school, we have this sort of rise in social media, and suddenly these sort of tools of the celebrity industry are not sort of siloed to the celebrity industry. Everyone can sort of manage their own personal brand, their own sort of media profile. We have those sort of tools at our disposal for publicity. So that's sort of what brought my interest into the relationship between digital media and the performance of self online, and how that relates and both reflects and refracts sort of celebrity logics we have. In terms of talking about the sort of workshop and sort of being sort of public-facing critics, I think is a nice way, or public-facing scholars. I'm still relatively young in my career, but I've had a few opportunities to speak either to, one thing I'd like to bring up, I just kind of scattered points here, to sort of build off of Cindy's op-ed on local news and things is sort of local news media. Every place we go through, maybe it's highly underfunded, but has sort of local news media. And frequently they want to go with someone who is a local part of that community to sort of reflect on any national or international sort of news. So I was contacted when the Cambridge Analytica sort of scandal broke, and they're like, we need someone with digital media background to talk to sort of local Cincinnatians about what they should do on their Facebook profile. And I had to give a more detailed answer than don't have one. But there's no other way you can protect your data there. And so, I'll talk about some of those strategies there, but I actually want to echo a couple of things that my fellow panelists mentioned, because I think they bring out some good points, some really great points. So,
to that particular audience, we were talking at South by Southwest, we were